Hi, let's talk Shakespeare. Renaissance writer William Shakespeare is often known for his plays and poems. Amongst his most famous works is Romeo and Juliet. Romeo and Juliet is a tragedy written around 1594. As well as all other Shakespearean plays, it is a drama and is divided into acts and scenes. The famous play is set in Verona, Italy in the 14th century. This tragic love story, which everyone thinks they know, turns out not to be a story about love after all. First thing, we need to know a little bit more about Shakespeare and his time.
Shakespeare lived from 1564 to 1616, a time period known as the Elizabethan era. During this time, social class was considered to be the base of society, as it divided people by fame, wealth, skills, and birth. Patriarchy also made an essential part in Shakespeare's time, since men held much more power over women. In Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare shapes his characters depending on which social class they belong to. Their use of language, behavior, and personality traits revolved around their status. Patriarchies in which women are supposed to be obedient and reserved to the men in their lives will always be present in Shakespeare's plays. This is why Juliet is introduced in the play as innocent, obedient, and respectful, and is later punished for speaking her mind.
Now, be attentive for these words, as they are frequently used in Shakespeare's plays, but no longer exist or have a different meaning in modern English. Here are some Shakespearean literary terms. A monologue is when a character speaks alone. A dialogue is a conversation between characters. A soliloquy is a monologue with the purpose of letting the audience know how the character feels. A perfect example is the balcony scene, where Romeo and Juliet both speak to themselves and confess the love they feel for each other. An aside is when a character speaks to another character or the audience, but the rest of the characters in the play are not supposed to be listening. Comic relief is a tactic used by Shakespeare to relieve emotional intensity in his plays. He does so by adding humor through characters such as fools or assistants. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows an important piece of information, but characters in the play do not. An example would be when Juliet takes the false poison. The audience knows that she's not really dead, but the characters think she is. Lastly, it is important to note that the play is based around two elite families, the Montagues and the Capulets. In the Montagues, we have Lord and Lady Montague, Romeo, son of Montague, Benvolio, nephew of Montague and friend of Romeo, Balthasar, servant to Romeo, and Abram, servant to Montague. For the Capulets, we have Lord and Lady Capulet, Juliet, daughter to Capulet, Tybalt, nephew of Lady Capulet, nurse to Juliet, Peter, servant to Juliet's nurse, Samson, servant to Capulet, Gregory, servant to Capulet, and an old man of the Capulet family. Other characters include Prince Escalus, ruler of Verona, Mercutio, kinsman of the prince and friend of Romeo, Friar Lawrence, a Franciscan priest, Friar John, another Franciscan priest, Count Paris, a young nobleman, kinsman of the prince, apothecary, page to Paris, chief watchman, 3 musicians, an officer, chorus, citizens of Verona, gentlemen and gentlewomen of both houses, maskers, torch-bearers, pages, guards, watchmen, servants, and attendants.
Romeo and Juliet is a timeless masterpiece that explores the intricacies of forbidden love. The tale of the two star-crossed lovers is easily Shakespeare's most recognizable play. It is the classical play one looks into when researching about love. Romeo and Juliet, however, is not only about love. This is what makes it so great. Shakespeare's description and interactions with love are essential to the play's development, but there are also other aspects that drive the plot. Shakespeare's genius syntax, sword fighting between members of opposing families, the tragedies that befall the cast, and comedic relief within scenes appeal to numerous audiences. It is hard to identify a single reason as to why this play is a masterpiece, but the idea of a play covering so many subjects is truly fascinating. Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet during the Elizabethan era. At the same time, Shakespeare was writing another one of his plays named A Midsummer Night's Dream, which was quite the opposite of the love story present in Romeo and Juliet. During the Elizabethan era, the patriarchy was the foundation of social class. Women were seen as objects or prized trophies in a marriage, a bargaining chip of sorts. Women in Shakespeare's plays, however, broke this barrier. They defied their fathers and went out to chase whatever they wanted. In this play, Juliet learns the limits of her power as a woman during those times, but she still pursues her loved one. Shakespeare was one of the first feminists within literature. He devised important roles for women in his plays, and they served as a critic to the society he lived in.
Remember these few things when reading Romeo and Juliet, and just know you got this.